This afternoon we're on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna with the devotees in Calcutta. And I believe we're on page 731, actually the very bottom of 730. Ramakrishna has just finished singing a few songs. The devotees listened to the songs in deep silence. After a few moments, Sri Ramakrishna said, "I have a slight cold, so I couldn't sing well." Gradually it became dusk. The shadow of evening fell on Calcutta. For the moment, the noise of the busy metropolis was stilled. Gongs and conch shells proclaimed the evening worship in many of the Hindu homes. Devotees of God set aside their worldly duties and turned their minds to prayer and meditation. This joining of day and night, this mystic twilight, always created an ecstatic mood in the Master. The devotees seated in the room looked at Sri Ramakrishna as he began to chant the sweet name of the Divine Mother. After the chanting, he began to pray. What was the need of prayer to a soul in constant communion with God? Did he not rather want to teach erring mortals how to pray? Addressing the Divine Mother, he said, "O Mother, I throw myself on thy mercy. I take shelter at thy hallowed feet. I do not want bodily comforts. I do not crave name and fame. I do not seek the 8 occult powers. Be gracious and grant that I may have pure love for thee, a love unsmitten by desire, untainted by any selfish ends, a love craved by the devotee for the sake of love alone. And grant me the favor, O Mother, that I may not be deluded by thy world-bewitching Maya, that I may never be attached to the world, to lust and greed, conjured up by thy inscrutable Maya. O Mother, there is no one but thee whom I may call my own. Mother, I do not know how to worship. I am without austerity. I have neither devotion nor knowledge. Be gracious, Mother, and out of thy infinite mercy, grant me love for thy lotus feet." Every word of this prayer, uttered from the depths of his soul, stirred the minds of the devotees. The melody of his voice and the childlike simplicity of his face touched their hearts very deeply. Girish invited the Master to his house, saying that he must go there that very night. Master, don't you think it will be late? Girish, no, sir. You may return any time you like. I shall have to go to the theater tonight to settle a quarrel there. It was 9 o'clock in the evening when the Master was ready to start for Girish's house. Since Balaram had prepared supper for him, Sri Ramakrishna said to Balaram, "Please send the food you have prepared for me to Girish's. I shall enjoy it there." He did not want to hurt Balaram's feelings. As the Master was coming down from the 2nd floor of Balaram's house, he became filled with divine ecstasy. He looked as if he were drunk. Narayan and M were by his side. A little behind came Ram, Chuni, and the other devotees. No sooner did he reach the ground floor than he became totally overwhelmed. Narayan came forward to hold him by the hand lest he should miss his footing and fall. The Master expressed annoyance at this. A few moments later, he said to Narayan affectionately, "If you hold me by the hand, people may think I am drunk. I shall walk by myself." Girish's house was not far away. The Master passed the crossing at Bushpara Lane. Suddenly he began to walk faster. The devotees were left behind. Presently Narendra was seen coming from a distance. At other times, the Master's joy would have been unbounded at the thought of Narendra or at the mere mention of his name. But now he did not even exchange a word with his beloved disciple. As the master and the devotees entered the lane where Girish lived, he was able to utter words. He said to Narendra, "You are quite well, my child. I could not talk to you then." Every word the master spoke was full of infinite tenderness. He had not yet reached the door of Girish's house when suddenly he stopped, looking at Narendra. "I want to tell you something. This is one, and that is another." Who could know what was passing through his innermost soul at that moment? Girish stood at the door to welcome the master. As Sri Ramakrishna entered the house, Girish fell at his feet and lay there on the floor like a rod. At the master's bidding, he stood up, touching the master's feet with his forehead. Sri Ramakrishna was taken to the drawing room on the second floor. The devotees followed him and sat down, eager to get a view of the master and listen to every word that fell from his lips. As Sri Ramakrishna was about to take the seat reserved for him, he saw a newspaper lying near it. He signed to someone to remove the paper. Since a newspaper contains worldly matters, gossip and scandal, he regarded it as unholy. After the paper was removed, he took his seat. Nitya Gopal came forward and bowed low before the master. "Master, well, you haven't been to Dakshineshwar for a long time." Nitya Gopal: "True, sir. I haven't been able to go there. I haven't been well. I have had pains all over my body." Master: "How are you now?" Nitya Gopal: "Not so well, sir." Master: "Bring your mind down 1 or 2 notes." Nitya Gopal: "I don't like people's company. They say all kinds of things about me. That sometimes frightens me. But again, I feel great strength within." Master: "That's only natural. Who lives with you?" Nitya Gopal: "Tarak, who became Swami Shivananda. He is always with me, but sometimes he too gets on my nerves." Master: "Nanta told me that there lived at his monastery an ascetic who had acquired occult powers. He used to go about with his eyes fixed on the sky. But when one of his companions left him, he became disconsolate." Again the master went into an ecstatic mood. Strange thoughts seemed to stir in his mind, and he remained speechless. After a while he said, "Art thou come? I too am here." Who could pretend to understand these words? Many of his devotees were in the room: Narendra, Girish, Ram, Haripada, Chuni, Balaram, and M. Narendra did not believe that God could incarnate himself in a human body. But Girish differed with him. He had the burning faith that from time to time the Almighty Lord, through his inscrutable power, assumes a human body and descends to earth to serve a divine purpose. The master said to Girish, "I should like to hear you and Narendra argue in English." The discussion began, but they talked in Bengali. Narendra said, "God is infinity. How is it possible for us to comprehend him? He dwells in every human being. It is not the case that he manifests himself through one person only." Sri Ramakrishna tenderly: "I quite agree with Narendra. God is everywhere. But then you must remember that there are different manifestations of his power in different beings. At some places there is a manifestation of his avidya shakti. At others, a manifestation of his vidya shakti. Through different instruments, God's power is manifest in different degrees, greater and smaller. Therefore, all men are not equal. Ram, what is the use of these futile arguments? Master sharply, no, there is a meaning in all this. Girish to Narendra, how do you know that God does not assume a human body? Narendra, God is beyond words and thought. Master, no, that is not true. He can be known by the pure buddhi, which is the same as the pure self. The seers of old directly perceived the pure self through their pure buddhi. Girish to Narendra, unless God himself teaches men through his human incarnation, who else will teach them spiritual mysteries? God takes a human body to teach men divine knowledge and divine love. Otherwise, who will teach? Narendra, why? God dwells in our own heart. He will certainly teach us from within the heart. Master tenderly, yes, he will teach us as our inner guide. Gradually, Narendra and Girish became involved in a heated discussion. If God is infinity, how can he have parts? What did Hamilton say? What were the views of Herbert Spencer, of Tyndall, of Huxley, and so forth and so on? Master to M, I don't enjoy these discussions. Why should I argue at all? I clearly see that God is everything. He himself has become all. I see that whatever is God. He is everything. Again, he is beyond everything. I come to a state in which my mind and intellect merge in the indivisible. At the sight of Narendra, my mind loses itself in the consciousness of the Absolute. To Girish, what do you say to that? Girish with a smile, why ask me? As if I understood everything except that one point. All laughed. Master, again, I cannot utter a word unless I come down at least 2 steps from the plane of samadhi. Shankara's non-dualistic explanation of Vedanta is true, and so is the qualified non-dualistic interpretation of Ramanuja. Narendra, what is qualified non-dualism? Question I ask myself many times. Master, it is the theory of Ramanuja. According to this theory, Brahman, or the Absolute, is qualified by the universe and its living beings. These 3, Brahman, the world, and living beings, together constitute one. Take the instance of a bell fruit. A man wanted to know the weight of the fruit. He separated the shell, the flesh, and the seeds. But can a man get the weight by weighing only the flesh? He must weigh flesh, shell, and seeds together. At first, it appears that the real thing is the fruit is the flesh, and not its seeds or shell. Then by reasoning, you find that the shell, seeds, and flesh all belong to the fruit. The shell and seeds belong to the same thing that the flesh belongs to. Likewise, in spiritual discrimination, one must first reason, following the method of not this, not this. God is not the universe. God is not the living beings. Brahman alone is real, and all else is unreal. Then one realizes, as with the bell fruit, that the reality from which we derive the notion of Brahman is the very reality that evolves the idea of living beings and the universe. The Nitya and the Leela are the 2 aspects of one and the same reality. Therefore, according to Ramanuja, Brahman is qualified by the universe and the living beings. This is the theory of qualified non-dualism. To M, I do see God directly. What shall I reason about? I clearly see that he himself has become everything, that he himself has become the universe and all living beings. But without awakening one's own inner consciousness, one cannot realize the all-pervading consciousness. How long does a man reason? So long as he has not realized God. But mere words will not do. As for myself, I clearly see that he himself has become everything. The inner consciousness must be awakened through the grace of God. Through this awakening, a man goes into samadhi. He often forgets that he has a body. He gets rid of his attachment to lust and greed, and does not enjoy any talk unless it is about God. Worldly talk gives him pain. Through the awakening of the inner consciousness, one realizes the all-pervading consciousness. The discussion came to a close. Sri Ramakrishna said to M, I have observed that a man acquires one kind of knowledge about God through reasoning, and another kind through meditation. But he acquires a third kind of knowledge about God when God reveals himself to him, his devotee. If God himself reveals to his devotee the nature of divine incarnation, how he plays in the human form, then the devotee doesn't have to reason about the problem or need of explanation. Do you know what it is like? Suppose a man is in a dark room. He goes on rubbing a match against a matchbox, and all of a sudden light comes. Likewise, if God gives us this flash of divine light, all our doubts are destroyed. Can one ever know God by mere reasoning? Sri Ramakrishna asked Narendra to sit by his side. He tenderly inquired about his health and showed him much affection. Narendra to the master, why, I have meditated on Kali for 3 or 4 days, but nothing has come of it. Master, all in good time, my child. Kali is none other than Brahman. That which is called Brahman is really Kali. She is the primal energy. When the energy remains inactive, I call it Brahman. And when it creates, preserves, and destroys, I call it Shakti or Kali. What you call Brahman, I call Kali. Brahman and Kali are not different. They are like fire in its power to burn. If one thinks of fire, one must think of its power to burn. If one recognizes Kali, one must also recognize Brahman. Again, if one recognizes Brahman, one must recognize Kali. Brahman and its power are identical. It is Brahman whom I address as Shakti or Kali. It was late at night. Girish asked Haripada to call a cab, for he had to go to the theater. As Haripada was about to leave the room, the master said with a smile, Mind, a cab. Don't forget to bring one. All laugh. Haripada, smiling, Yes, sir. I am going out just for that. How can I forget it? Girish, that I should have to go to the theater and leave you here. Master, no. You must hold to both. King Janaka paid attention to both religious and worldly duties and drank his milk from a brimming cup. All laugh. Girish, I've been thinking of leaving the theater to the youngsters. Master, no, it is all right. You are doing good to many. Narendra said in a whisper, Just a minute ago he, meaning Girish, was calling him, meaning Sri Ramakrishna, God, an incarnation, and now he is attracted to the theater. Narendra was sitting beside the master. The latter looked at him intently and suddenly moved closer to his beloved disciple. Narendra did not believe in God's assuming a human body, but what did it matter? Sri Ramakrishna's heart overflowed with more and more love for his disciple. He touched Narendra's body and said, quoting from a song, "Do you feel that your pride is wounded? So be it. Then we too have our pride." Then the Master said to Narendra, "As long as a man argues about God, he has not realized him. You two were arguing. I didn't like it. How long does one hear noise and uproar in a house where a big feast is being given? So long as the guests are not seated for the meal. As soon as food is served and people begin to eat, 3/4 of the noise disappears." All laughed. "When the dessert is served, there is still less noise. But when the guests eat the last course, buttermilk, then one hears nothing but the sound, soup, soup. When the meal is over, the guests retire to sleep, and all is quiet. The nearer you approach to God, the less you reason and argue. When you attain him, then all sounds, all reasoning and disputing come to an end. Then you go into samadhi, sleep, into communion with God in silence." The Master gently stroked Narendra's body and affectionately touched his chin, uttering sweetly the holy words, "Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om." He was fast becoming unconscious of the outer world. His hand was on Narendra's foot. Still in that mood, he gently stroked Narendra's body. Slowly, a change came over his mind. With folded hands, he said to Narendra, "Sing a song, please, then I shall be all right." He sat motionless as a statue. Presently, he became intoxicated with divine love and said, "O Radha, watch your step. Otherwise, you may fall into the Jamuna. Ah, how mad she is with the love of Krishna." The Master was in a rapturous mood. Quoting from a song, he said, "Tell me, friend, how far is the grove where Krishna, my beloved, dwells? His fragrance reaches me even here, but I'm tired and can walk no further." Then the Master completely forgot the outer world. He did not notice anyone in the room, not even his beloved Narendra seated by his side. He did not know where he himself was seated. He was totally merged in God. Suddenly he stood up shouting, deep drunk with the wine of divine love. As he took his seat again, he muttered, "I see a light coming, but I know not whence it comes." Narendra sang, "Lord, thou hast lifted all my sorrow with the vision of thy face, and the magic of thy beauty has bewitched my mind. Beholding thee, the 7 worlds forget their never-ending woe. What shall I say then to myself, of myself, a poor and lowly soul?" Listening to the song, Sri Ramakrishna again went into deep samadhi. His eyes were closed and his body was transfixed. Coming down from the ecstatic mood, he looked around and said, "Who will take me to the temple garden?" He appeared like a child who felt confused in the absence of his companion. It was late in the evening. The night was dark. The devotees stood by the carriage that had been brought to take the Master to Dakshineshwar. They helped him in gently, for he was still in deep ecstasy. The carriage moved down the street, and they looked after it with wistful eyes. Soon the devotees turned homeward, a gentle south wind blowing in their faces. Some were humming the lines of the song, "Lord, thou hast lifted all my sorrow with the vision of thy face, and the magic of thy beauty has bewitched my mind." And that's the end of that evening. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Okay.
On Facebook, on YouTube,
I'm sorry?
On YouTube, someone said, "Please continue. This class brings much solace to our lives."
Well, we will continue. We will continue this class every Friday night, every Saturday night at 5 o'clock, unless there is another event superseding it. It will be on every Saturday night at 5. I'm glad you're joining us. Okay, since it's the end of the day, I think that's a good place to stop this evening. Did everyone get a little rain today? We finally got just a dab. Nothing measurable. I checked the rain gauge. Not a drop in it, but the ground is all wet and everything looks good. So, and you're all keeping well? Good. Okay. Stay well. Good, Lito. I see you're staying well too. And we'll end with a chant. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. We'll see you Wednesday, if not